Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. Welcome to today's presentation at the second annual New Jersey Youth Transition Conference. My name is Janine Brinkley, and I represent SPAN Parent Advocacy Network on behalf of the YTC Planning Committee. I want to make sure you know we will be placing a registration form in the chat box for you to share your contact information so that we can share the recordings and resources with you from this workshop. Please note, if you're seeking continuing education credit, you're required to complete the form, as this is the contact method by which we will send you your proof of attendance. Today's workshops will be hosted via the same link you have joined with. You can see the full schedule on our website, and I will share the agenda on this screen after the conclusion of the workshop. Our presenter today is my colleague, Dawn Monaco, also from SPAN Parent Advocacy Network, and she's going to be presenting on preparing for work after high school. Take it away, Dawn.
Hi, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, let me just, sorry, trying to move things around here. Oops. Okay, so welcome everyone to the workshop Preparing for Work After High School. My name is Dawn Monaco. I am currently a project director at SPAN Parent Advocacy Network on a grant called Real Transition Partners. I've been with SPAN for about 10 years now, almost 11, and spent a lot of time in those 11 years training and doing workshops as well. So very quickly, if you're not familiar with SPAN, we are New Jersey's federally funded parent center. There is a parent center in every state. We provide to families, youth and young adults with disabilities, and professionals trainings. We have many workshops we provide on a regular basis. I recommend that you check out our website so you can see our events calendar and what we have scheduled. We also provide technical assistance for families or youth or guardians to help them in the special education process, or if their child has any special health care needs or emotional needs, they can call our warm line, give their name and information, and someone will call them back within 48 hours to help them. You can call as many times as you like. We're there to help with anything. And we also provide information and support. We have a lot. I used to say that SPAN kills a lot of trees, but you know what? During the COVID now, we don't really do that very often because everything is online, which is a great thing. So we've transitioned to all online. You can find lots of resources on our website. We also have a YouTube channel, which has really been expanded since the pandemic. So again, if you haven't checked that out, I recommend that you do that as well. So today we're going to discuss the importance of working after high school, strategies to prepare youth to be employed after high school, and we're going to discuss the IEP, the goals, transition services, and the activities that lead to a successful transition to post-secondary employment. I did not mention that my biggest role, along with my work at SPAN, is that I am a parent of a 24-year-old son on the autism spectrum, and that's how I found SPAN many, many years ago. A lot of us at SPAN have some connection to disabilities, and that's how we find, I found SPAN because I needed assistance at the time. Anyway, I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. So the purpose of special education is to make sure that we are providing to all children with disabilities and special education, that we provide them with special education to ensure that all children with disabilities are prepared for either post-secondary education, employment, education, employment, and independent living. So we'll talk about how that plays out in the IEP. So the law states that when the child turns 16, that the IEP must include appropriate measurable post-secondary goals. And I always like to stress the word measurable, because a goal is just a statement unless we can measure it. And we track progress by how we measure the goal. And then they should be based upon age-appropriate transition assessments that are related to either training, education, employment, and where appropriate, independent living skills. Now, I do want to note that in New Jersey, our transition begins at the age of 14, whereas our federal law begins at the age of 16, but in New Jersey, it begins at 14. So setting our goals for after high school, we want to make sure that our post-secondary goals are based on transition assessments. Assessments should help our students answer these questions. What is my goal for working after high school? What strengths do I have? What supports help me learn? That's an error. It should say our employment goals are based on transition assessments. I apologize for that. What supports help me learn? And what next steps do I need to take to make that goal happen? So there's just questions that we want to talk to the students about early on and make sure that we're moving in the right direction when it comes to their employment and the goals for their employment. And then students' transition services and activities should ensure that they will be prepared to work after high school. So what are some important factors in this successful employment after high school? We want to make sure that students receive employment training and work experiences while they're in high school. We want to make sure that we have high parental expectations. So, in this day and age, employment is absolutely an expectation for our young people with disabilities when they leave high school. And we want to make sure parents understand that and that that is absolutely a possibility for them. And that employers' considerations for hiring a youth with a disability is they want to make sure that we have preparedness for the interview, that we have professionalism and prior paid work experience, or at least some work experience. And we're going to talk about how vocational rehabilitation kind of works with that as well. So also expectation of the competitive integrative employment sets or reinforces the expectation of working as an adult. As I said, that is absolutely one of our expectations for our young people. We can access pre-employment transition services, which I'll talk more about in a couple slides, and put transition services in place to build employment-related skills, and then gain skills and credentials leading to career pathways. So I want to stress at this point too, because we keep talking about services and goals, that that the transition plan in the IEP should absolutely make sure that we have all this in there. The last thing we want to see is a young adult get to the age of 18 and the parent talk about how they haven't learned anything, or they don't have any work experience, or they want to work but they don't know what they want to do. And this is something that we want to make sure that you're discussing at the IEP table. And remember, parents are equal members of that IEP team. At the table, we want to make sure that we're talking about this and that we're hearing the youth voice. A colleague, me and my colleague yesterday did a workshop on the importance of youth voice in the IEP process. We want to make sure that we listen to what the young adult wants to do when they leave school and what their interests are. And I'll talk more about that. So the importance of work-based learning in high school. So we want to have opportunities for them to develop employment-related competencies in a workplace environment. So providing students really with an opportunity to experience various types of work in various settings allows that student and their team to truly assess their strengths and their interests. We want to identify the type of work setting in which the student will likely be most successful. So is it a job where interacting with other customers is a good fit for them? Would a job that requires a lot of physical movement be a good fit for them? Or is a job with a regular schedule of activities best? So I can tell you from my own experiences, my son, as I mentioned, is 24 and he is employed. And for him, the last one is key. And we knew that early on. We talked about that at the IEP meeting, that a job with a regular schedule. And I mean, I used to joke at the time that my son would thrive on a job that you and I would be completely bored with, because if he's going to do the same thing every day, he's very, very happy with that. So knowing our young adults and what works best for them is really important. We want to make sure we build their work history and their references. Again, discover their interests and their strengths. So we need to listen to them and have those conversations at the table early on. Build skills to expand their options. So again, when my son started doing job exploration and job sampling, we had no idea what he would be successful in. But that was the idea, to try different samplings and try different jobs to see what worked for him. And then we need to identify what supports and accommodations will be effective for that. And in our case, he has to have a support person with him at his job. So having those conversations together and with the young person is important. So types of work experiences. So career awareness, which happens at a young level where we begin to talk about working and develop self-awareness and learn about work values and roles in work, again, usually happens at a younger level. Career exploration, where we learn about work by connecting our interests with specific careers. Now, there are some young adults that we know right off the bat that they love working with plants or they love working with animals. And we absolutely will know right from the beginning that that's where they're going to go. And then we work around job exploration in that area, what works best for them. But there are some where we don't know. So we have to sample and just figure it out as we move through our transition years. Because we do learn through work. I remember when we asked my son what he liked best, and he at first told us he liked working at a restaurant. And when we really asked him why, it was because he got French fries at the end of his shift. So, I mean, that's wonderful, but that's, I guess, not really a reason to pick a certain job. And he ultimately didn't end up there. But we talked about it, and we talked about, other things that he liked about the job. And then career training and placement, learn to work in a specific career of choice by doing some trainings around that. And I will be taking, I think we're gonna, at the end, we'll have time for questions. So we have to make sure that we clearly define in the student's IEP and in the transition plan what we're working towards for when they leave school. And that we have those goals in place. So if we know that, Johnny doesn't do well greeting customers, but we want to sort of work on that skill because we never know if he's going to be working with a customer, then we know that that's a goal that we need to put in the IEP and work towards that. And then we need to make sure that we have transition services and activities that are in place so that we can work towards accomplishing those goals to be successful in the work environment. And then the work-based learning takes place in the workplace. So as I mentioned, job sampling in different locations, whether it's at a local pharmacy or your CVS or a restaurant or a doctor's office, whatever it may be. But we also want to make sure that we're not just placing them in a work environment and not monitoring what they're doing and evaluating that. Again, we want to have measurable goals in that environment, because if we can't track progress, we have no idea whether we're moving in the right direction. And then obviously this is supported by school personnel. So some examples of work-based learning experiences. We could have tours of a workplace, work-related field trips. And that's what, and I just want to make sure that we know that that's the beginning of it. That's not just it. We don't just do a field trip and then we're done. But that's the beginning, where we have a work related field trip and guest speakers, employer presentation, career fairs. I did want to mention, I had a parent tell me once that, the student was going out in a group, everybody was going to different workplaces and then coming back. And my question to them were, well, what are some of the goals that we have in place for when they do that? There weren't any. What are they learning when they go out as a group together? No idea. So going out as a group initially is great, but ultimately it should be individualized to what your child, your student, your youth actually need in that environment. Then also we have job shadowing. Volunteering, I want to mention, talk a little bit about volunteering because we as parents need to do our work as well. So I'll always say, do not rely solely on the school district. Of course, they're the experts in certain areas, but when it comes to volunteering, this is something that we parents can do on our own. Especially now in the world that we live in, there are a lot of places that need help. Our food banks could always use help. So on a Saturday afternoon, look, there's great websites. I've been on the Bergen Volunteers. I'm in Bergen County, and I find things that my son and I can go to, and he can learn, socialize with the other people there. And we're doing a great thing because we're volunteering, but it's more than just doing a wonderful thing. I mean, it's wonderful that we're doing it, but he's learning while we do it. So that's something that we as parents can do as well. And I wanted to stress that. Service learning, student-run enterprises. We're seeing a lot of adults and their families, adults with disabilities and their families starting their own jobs, employment businesses for their young person to work in. We see a lot of that. So student-run enterprises with the family, work-study programs, internships, paid or unpaid, apprenticeships, and paid employment. So these are the roles and responsibilities for planning for work after high school. As always, the student is in the middle because this is all about them and what they want. And again, we need to listen to their voice and what their interest is. So for an example, I have a colleague at work whose son has a physical disability, and he loves basketball. And when you would ask him when he was younger what he wanted to do, he would tell you he wanted to be a professional basketball player. So we knew that that was not something that would be appropriate for him because of his disability. But we're not going to just ignore it and let it go. We're going to have a conversation around the fact that, okay, so you love basketball. What can we do to help kind of build from there? So he ended up working at the Boys and Girls Club, assisting with the basketball program, and he was thrilled. So we don't want to stifle, we want to listen to them, but of course within what's appropriate, but not just stifle them. Kind of just have that conversation about, well, what is it about that you like, and then maybe we could do this. Maybe you can work at, well, I don't even know if there is Modell's anymore, but or the Sports Authority or whatever, a sporting goods store. Because you love sports, maybe that's something you can do. So we want to listen to our young people. It's their life, and so we want to include them because we know that when we're included in decisions, we're more, we take more ownership of them. And then we have the family's role, again, is holding high expectations for our student to make sure that they can engage in competitive employment. All the team members should have high expectations by providing work learning experiences and connecting the student to resources and opportunities. Teachers can help by building their resume, practice interview skills, complete applications for jobs. And then the vocational VR or vocational rehabilitation counselors, we're going to talk more about that actually in the next slide. So there is something called pre-employment transition services, and that's through the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation. Sometimes referred to as pre-ETS. That's what we kind of call it, but it stands for pre-employment transition services. So this is something through vocational rehabilitation for students that are ages of 14 through 21 who have a disability. It will introduce students to employment, help them make informed choices, learn acceptable work habits, and acquire real work experience. Students, families, or guardians bear no cost to this service. It is solely paid for through VR. Referrals can be made by anyone, but most referrals are usually made through your school district. And at the end of this webinar, there are several resource links. One of them is a copy of a referral form for pre-ETS. And then there's a really good toolkit, a Voc Rehab toolkit, among other things. I can't remember, but I put them in yesterday, so they'll be helpful. And the school district will share your records with New Jersey Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services to help identify career interests. They'll do job exploration counseling, work-based learning experiences in school, after school, or community-based. Counseling about enrollment in transition or post-secondary programs at institutions of higher education. So if you need to get trained in a skill afterwards, they can talk to you about that. Workplace readiness training, social skills, independent living skills, instruction in self-advocacy, including peer mentoring. But I do want to mention that with these services, they will not duplicate what your school is already doing. This is for services that is not being utilized or not being taught in school. And you can be referred by the school district. A parent can also refer their child to these services, but most likely the referral is done through school, but you can. I mean, you'll see the referral form and you can talk to your school district about this. This is a very underutilized service. VR has funds for this and it's underutilized. So again, resources at the end for you to learn a little bit more about that. Take advantage of this. Look into it and see if it's appropriate for your young person. So then that was pre-ETS. This is just Voc Rehab in general. So Voc Rehab, vocational rehabilitation services, are any individual with a physical, mental, cognitive, or other form of disability who has a substantial impediment to employment may qualify for service through the New Jersey Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services. And again, I put a link to a toolkit at the end of this, and you'll get a copy of this presentation. So a student or a guardian must complete a referral to VR. VR is an adult system that requires eligibility. So I talked yesterday, and when we talk about transition, all adult system services are based off eligibility. All of our kids are entitled to a free and appropriate public education. But when we leave school and we go into the adult system, you have to be deemed eligible for any services. And that's why, at the top here, it says that you have to have a disability that impedes your ability to work. So you have to fill out the application. That requires that you're eligible for this service, and then a VR counselor will attend the last IEP meeting to assist in employment services. So I would say to parents, this is something that you want to do a couple of years before your child's going to leave school. So if they're going to leave when they're 18 and they're a senior, then you're going to want to do this, say the beginning of their junior year. If they're staying in school till they're 21, then I would say still do this, because you want to, my son stayed in school until 21, but I completed this probably when he was around 18. And what happens is, I can tell you from my experience, and this was a few years ago, we filled out the application, we were contact, there was a general meeting we had to go to. Now, I don't know if they still do that. And we were in person. I don't know if they're in person still, if they're still virtual. And then once he was deemed eligible, We actually had the person come to the last 2 IEP meetings, but that's not always the case. But definitely, and make sure you're once you get a VR counselor, make sure your case manager is aware that you have one. Get the contact information to your case manager, your school case manager, so they can invite them to your IEP meeting, because they will assist you. So number one, if you require some help in finding a job, I do want to say that those work experiences when you're in school, a lot of times you can make a connection where they will hire you when you leave school. Now, if that's not the case, then VR will help you find a job. So again, I can tell you from my experience, my son unfortunately aged out during 2020, during the pandemic. So it was June of 2020. And he was all set. He was doing volunteer work with a person from school who would bring him to the local hospital, and he was doing volunteer work, and they were planning on hiring him when he left. So here he is in 2020, he ages out, and everything stops at the hospitals because, of course, they were inundated with health issues from COVID. So we were left with scrambling. What are we doing now? I mean, he had a job set up. That's what he was going to do. So we reached out to our VR counselor, and they actually hired through them. They contracted with an agency who worked with my son to make sure his resume was up to date. He practiced interview skills with him and helped him to apply for jobs, and ultimately got a job at our local Marshalls, where they actually knew him because he was doing some work for them as well. He was sampling there as well, and they knew him. But that wasn't really where we were initially going to go, but it has worked out, and he's been there since December of 20. So that was how we worked with DVR, and that was our experience with it. So Alicia's Law. So this is a law that states that a student who is going to not receive a diploma at the age of 18, but going to stay in school till they're 21, can continue, is entitled to receive special ed until they're 21. Student whose high school special ed program requires instruction beyond those 4 years are permitted to participate with their class in the graduation ceremony. So basically, let me just say, what they do is your student's going to stay in school until 21, but at 18, they can go through all of the graduation activities. They walk through the graduation ceremony. They can go to the prom. They can go to whatever your school has, project graduation or those activities. They are entitled to participate with their peers, their non-disabled peers, in all those activities, yet they're staying in school till 21. They are not receiving a diploma, they are receiving a certificate. Okay, that's Alicia's Law. So disclosing your disability in the workplace, this is just something, there is actually, I believe, no, there is not. Never mind. We have resources at SPAN to help you with disability disclosure if you need to understand this more. But basically what this is saying is that when you're going to, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, you are, with a disability, are entitled to request accommodations in the workplace based on your disability. However, you have to have, the young person has to have the ability to disclose their disability. But more importantly, they need to even know that they have a disability. So in the workshop we did yesterday, we talked a lot about self-advocacy skills, understanding your disability, understanding what your needs are, what your accommodations are, and understanding what your strengths are. And unless you have those self-advocacy skills, it's very difficult for you to be able to disclose your disability in the workplace. And as an aside, this is also something they're going to need to do if they're going to go to some college program after high school and they need accommodations in college. So disability disclosure is very important, and it requires them to really know what their disability is and understand it so that they can share that information. and provide practical suggestions for job accommodations. So if we have, a young person who had accommodations in high school and was very successful with those accommodations, they can talk to their employer and disclose their disability and say, I work better when, say, I'm by myself in the back of the workforce, in the back part of the building. So whatever it is, they need to understand their disability so that they're able to disclose that. And it's important only if their disability can potentially affect their ability to perform essential functions at that job. If not, they don't need to disclose it. However, if they don't disclose it and then their disability affects their work performance and they unfortunately get, fired or reprimanded, if they don't know, if your workplace does not know about your disability, then they can't help, or you have no leg to stand on if you get fired. So disability disclosure is really important in understanding it. And we have a lot of resources around that. So this is just what would you disclose? You would disclose general information about your disability, why you're sharing this information, types of jobs accommodations that have worked in the past, types of job accommodations that may be needed in the future, how your disability and other life experiences can positively impact your work performance. Now, I've heard lots of different things from parents and people about disability disclosure. Some people believe that they disclose their disability, they won't get the job. That's something you have to decide on your own. I would hate to think that that's actually happening, although I don't believe that they're lying to me when they tell me that. So that's something that's personal that needs to be discussed between you and people that you trust. So transition goals and activities under employment, we want to make sure that they hold part-time job, a summer job, a volunteer position, explore career options and make choices based on interest and ability. Applies problem-solving strategy. So is that something that you don't have or your child or young person does not have? Again, we want to make sure that there are goals in the IEP to build these skills. The more we do that, the more successful that they will be when they leave school. Identify personal strengths, challenges, and interests related to career choice. Obtain current information from reliable sources on career options, and pursue competitive employment. Again, everything should be individualized to your child, your young person. So I want to give an example of how we would do this with a young person. So I have like a little scenario here that we could look at. So here's Janelle. She is 14 years old and she has an intellectual disability. She is included in general education classes for art, music, science, and history. She receives math and reading instruction in a self-contained classroom. So her transition-related assessments are observations, parent interview, and that's really important. So again, your parent is a very big part of this process because no one knows your child like you do. So the parent interview, online career assessment and evaluations in school-based work settings, library and school garden. What are Janelle's hopes and dreams? And how do we find out what her hopes and dreams are? We ask her. So we want to make sure we talk to her. Janelle and her parents together, what her hopes and dreams are is that she can work outside with flowers and trees, and that's her preference. So her employment goal, ultimate goal, is that after completing a certificated program for students with disabilities, so that means she's staying in school till she's 21, Janelle will be completely employed for 20 hours a week with support of a job coach. So we want to make sure the IEP team is going to discuss Janelle's age-appropriate transition-related assessments, We want to make sure Janelle hasn't, I'm sorry, that she is involved and that she has a say in the whole process and that we hear her voice. And what does she like about working with flowers? Again, this kind of goes back to what I was saying about my coworker's son in basketball. So what is it that she likes? Does she think flowers are pretty? Does she like working with dirt? Does she want to just be in a store where it sells flowers, like a garden store? Or does she want to actually work for a florist? So those are things we want to make sure that we talk about. So we want to make sure that the IEP team knows to really include the parents and Janelle in sharing anything that she feels that she wants to work on and learn as a goal as this goal. So here's some goals. Their employment annual goal is given direct instruction on how to greet customers in a way that works for her. Janelle will appropriately greet coworkers and customers at a vocational training site without physical contact with 75% accuracy. So we also want to, it may require for Janelle for us to break down that goal even more. So we then start off maybe as breaking that goal down into where Janelle will just say hi, or Janelle will stand at the door and just kind of wave to people when they come in. And then once she is successful doing that 75% of the time, maybe we work, so taking that goal and breaking it down into steps so that she ultimately is able to do that goal 75% of the time. So our service, though, is that we're going to enroll her in a pre-employment transition services program. That's that PREETS program through the Voc Rehab Agency. And she's going to obtain a summer job or an internship at a local greenhouse or garden department, say at Lowe's or Home Depot. So they're utilizing the PREETS to help her get that summer job, to help her get more experience. So her employment annual goal in the IEP is going to read that by the end of the first year, given direct instruction on how to greet customers, which we talked about, in a way that works for her, Janelle will appropriately greet coworkers and customers 75% of the time. The service is that she is in the PREETS program through Voc Rehab, and the activity is that she's going to have a summer job. So that, I thought I had my apologies. I don't have the slide at the end with our contact information. So I'm going to add that to the chat box. Janine, if you're able to do that, can you do that for me? You may have already done it.
I did already put the website in, but I'll put it in again. No problem.
Yeah, and the YouTube channel too, please, because I do want to mention. So here are the resources that I talked about. There's the Vocation Rehab Toolkit. That's a wonderful resource. It's jam-packed with information. Your PREETS referral form, our VR referral form, a PREETS manual, which really gives a lot of good information on PREETS, a work-based learning fact sheet, which just talks about work-based learning, and then a website on summer jobs and hire teen. What I did want to mention, though, is under our YouTube channel, under the transition page, we facilitated a 2-part webinar series with the National Technical Assistance Center on transition. And it was all on vocational rehabilitation. They're about an hour and a half each, I believe, maybe an hour. One of them is an hour, the other one's an hour and a half. But there is so much information around vocational rehabilitation and so many, they even get into SSI, which we had a great workshop yesterday. Hopefully you're all taking advantage of all the wonderful workshops we've been having, but we had someone present on SSI from the Social Security Administration yesterday, and that was wonderful. We do touch on that on our VR webinars. So I highly recommend that you take a look at our YouTube channel because there's other information on there as well, but those two on VR are very helpful. And also on the role of a VR counselor, the counselor plays a very important role. And we want to make sure that when you work with VR, that we have what they call an individual plan for employment for the young adult, and that we meet the goals there in that document as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have. I think it's about 20 of, and we have until 2. I know it's a lot of information, but I think the main thing for us to really keep in mind is that, number one, working after high school is absolutely can be an expectation for your young adult. And it may not be 5 days a week. For my son, it's 5 days a week, for 3 hours a day. And that's pretty much the max he can do. And so then we fill his day with other activities for him so that his day is full. But maybe, maybe it's 2 days a week for 3 hours or whatever it may be. It absolutely can be an expectation for your young adult. If your child has an intellectual and developmental disability and they are eligible, so there's that word eligible again, eligible for the services through the Division of Developmental Disabilities, then there are services that can be put in place to support your young person in the workforce. So my son does have a job support person, disability support person. Sometimes the young person requires a higher level, such as a job coach, to be with them, but there are services to help. So, this is a discussion that you want to have with your young person. For us, we knew my son wanted to work. He definitely loves working, accomplishing tasks. He's social, so he wanted to do that. It's individualized for whatever is appropriate for your young adult. And so having a conversation and knowing your young adult, I mean, as parents, we know them, but we want to have those high expectations as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Dawn, this is Amy. I have a question sent to me, which you touched on in the beginning of the workshop, but people have joined since. So it'd be great if you could help to clarify this for those that may have not heard. If a 14-year-old with a diagnosis of autism is homeschooled, who makes the referral for pre-ETS?
The parent can, absolutely. And there's the form right here, the pre-ETS referral form.
And the pre-ETS form is in the chat. Thank you.
Oh, it is in the chat. I have to say, it's actually in the slide. You can see it right now. It's up on the screen, but we could put, if they're going to get a copy of this PowerPoint, correct, Amy?
Yes.
Okay, so then they'll have the resources, but if you want to put it in the chat, that's fine. I don't know if I can, but
Dawn, I will go in
okay.
and for the PowerPoint and copy these links and post them in the chat in just 1 minute.
Okay, or I can too as well, if you can't. So I would be lying if I told you I'm totally up on homeschooling, because I'm not. I mean, we work, with public education, so I don't know all the regulations, but a parent can absolutely refer a child for these services. So yes, there's the form there, and talk to them. And call the number for your local VR agency. There's one in every county, and talk to them about that, about homeschooling. But there should be no reason why I would think that they can't qualify for that, because our goal, is that we get our young people. We're an employment first state, New Jersey, which means that we should have an expectation of employment for everyone. And so I can't imagine that you can't do that. Anything else, Amy?
Not coming in through me, but just wanted to check in with you. When we share the PowerPoint, it's going to be in a PDF version. Does SPAN enable the clicks on the PDF when it's shared with us, so that when it gets to the general public, they'll be able to click this slide and then access those links?
Okay, that's a little complicated for me. I
can check on. So will we be creating the PDF?
Well, go ahead, Dawn. Sorry.
What did we sent it to? I'm copying it right now. I'm putting in the chat, but
thank you.
Yeah, let me do that just to.
Amy, I didn't know. I thought we sent it to you as a PowerPoint. So will you be converting to PDF, or do you want us to convert it to PDF? Because we can.
If you want the links to be clickable, they have to be set up in the PDF format when you save it. As they're being shared with the YTC committee, they're in a PowerPoint version. I save as PDF. I do not enable all of the clicks in everybody's PowerPoint. So it would have to be done by the organization themselves, and
Okay.
which point when it's converted, it would stay, hopefully.
I put everything in the chat, so you can go ahead and copy
Don, you're
that.
faster than me.
Well, I had it open, so.
Good point.
But you know, I mean, I'm happy to answer questions. So, you know, if anybody has anything, I just think it's important also to make sure everything is individualized to your student. I'm not sure. I'm hoping we have parents here on the website. I mean, on the webinar, we may only have professionals. I'm not sure. But if we do have professionals, please forward your families that you work with to SPAN, and we will definitely provide them with whatever resources they need. Because as I mentioned, we're doing workshops constantly. We have a resource parent series that we do for families, and we have lots of resources at the agency. So we're happy. That's what we're here for.
Dawn, I can speak to that. We have a lot of parents in this
Oh,
room,
good.
just
Okay,
having
wonderful.
seen them throughout the conference and asking questions.
Great.
Yeah.
Great to hear. So,
yeah, I know.
you know, because high expectations, but you know, if like I said, it may not be every day, could be just a couple of days, but whatever it is, if that's something they're interested in, it's definitely something that can be done. They can be employed after they leave school, and utilize the VR counselors in helping with that. We had a great they contracted with a great agency that really worked with my son well. So we were very happy with that. And he's still at the job 2 years later, which is great. So, but I'm willing, you know,
Dawn,
we're here
I put a link in the chat too, if people want to subscribe to our weekly newsletter.
Oh, that's
And
wonderful.
And earlier, when you were talking about disability disclosure, I put the link into our Learning After High School page that has good information on disability disclosure on it.
Wonderful. That's great. Thank you. See, it helps to have my coworker doing the hosting today.
That's right.
But yeah, that if you don't get our newsletter, please sign up for it, because it will list the coming week's events. And there's great resource articles in it. And then if you sign up for this one, you actually get 2 different newsletters. You get our weekly bridge newsletter, but you also get our monthly transition newsletter. So if you haven't signed up for that, go ahead and do so. If you miss it here and you don't do it and you leave this webinar, go to our website. There's a link at the top of the website where you can join the newsletter.
Dawn, it's Amy. I don't see any questions in the chat. I
did get a direct message telling me that they love SPAN, so thank you for that.
I just want to comment too, as someone that's been in all of the workshops so far, and your content today. I just really enjoyed and appreciated you talking about meaningful employment and incorporating the person into the decision making, and suggested really creative job ideas based on their interests. We don't always see that with our young adults, and we see them oftentimes guided to maybe being a shopping cart pusher, a shelf stalker, or a pizza box folder. That one comes up a lot. And I loved how you integrated like the outdoors. I think it was Janelle that was interested in that, and just a very personal interest. And it's so important to consider that for employment. It's just, I just wanted to acknowledge that you incorporated that. And I know SPAN is very person-centered, and I really appreciate hearing that today. Thank you.
Good, I'm glad. I do have a question, actually. Someone is asking if a 14-year-old has SSI, are they still eligible for DVRS? Yes. SSI has nothing to do with DVRS. And in fact, most people with disabilities who reach out to DVR, if they're going to be receiving DDD services, they have to have SSI. So it all intertwines. So you don't, it's fine. Yep. My son has SSI, and he utilized DVR.
Just to clarify.
You know, oh, go ahead, Amy.
No, I was going to say DVR is under the Department of Labor. So it's a statewide organization, and you it's utilized just like a DOL, like a person with or without a disability can utilize their services, and there's no eligibility requirements. That question came up in the last workshop as well, so just wanted to help clarify that for you guys.
You know, when you were talking, Amy, about the different jobs, when they were talking with my son initially about what he wanted to do, he said he wanted to work at ShopRite, and my immediate reaction was no, you can do more than that. Now I know afterwards in talking to him why he said that, because he loves to food shop with me. So he wasn't really even thinking about a job. He was just saying, I like ShopRite. But also my reaction, I had to take a step back, you know, because originally initially I said no. And so when you think about it, I was not listening to his voice because I immediately said no. But I was saying no because as a parent, I knew that he could do, my immediate thing went to pushing carts, and I knew that he could do more than that, because unfortunately, like you said, we find our kids are pushing carts, cleaning, sweeping things up, but nothing against those. Just know your child and know what they can do. And how do we know what they can do? When they job sample and they get out there and they have assessments and we observe them in certain areas. So it's and then maybe ShopRite would have ultimately been fine for him. Okay, but this was when he was 14, and I knew we had 4 years of learning before we were gonna really decide what he was going to do. So so just to keep in mind, it should be individualized, expectations should be high, and make sure your goals are measurable. That's a big one. And you know, you know, he's going out to a job sampling either by himself or with one other people, because how is it individualized if they're with a group of people? So I'm happy to be here till 2, if you that's what I've supposed to be, but if there's no other questions,
Give people 10 minutes back in their afternoon.
up to you, Amy. Doesn't matter
Maybe
to
your
me.
call.
No, it's
Amy's
up to
the
you.
boss.
No, that's not true. The world is your stage, Dawn. This is your presentation along with Janine and Span, and y'all, I'm here at your command. So you tell me how you want us to go.
No,
Why
I
don't we
mean,
go ahead?
Tell us.
Why don't we go ahead and wrap up, and then because then I'll be presenting similarly
oh, that's right.
about preparing for education after high school at 3 o'clock. So
Wonderful.
let me
Yep.
just say this concludes the workshop. I'm sorry, my phone is ringing. I can't shut it off. Sorry, my darn life. And this concludes the workshop from SPAN, and we really appreciate Dawn sharing her knowledge and resources. The recording will be made available on our website in November. If you need proof of attendance for continuing education credits, you hopefully filled out the form and you'll receive an email with your certificate. It is up to your employer to accept this proof of continuing education. You will not receive the certificate if you did not register using the form today that Amy just posted in the chat one more time. If you have any questions, you can reach us at newjerseyyouth@gmail.com, and I'll put that in the chat as well. Have a great